welcome to Information Please, your Peoria Public Library on the air, bringing you news about your library and your community. This evening, my guest is Connie Voss, Executive Director of Commonplace. Hi, Connie.
Hi, Roberta.
Thanks for being with us.
Happy to be here.
Good. Tonight, we're talking about Peoria Reads. And Peoria Reads started quite a while back, but people may not know how it started or what its goals are, and or what Peoria Reads is in terms of collaboration. So Connie, what can you tell us to enlighten us on this?
Well, back in 2001, both Peoria Public Library and Commonplace were having some similar thoughts about having a One City, One Book project that had been tried in Seattle in particular and other places as well. And the One City, One Book project concept is that you get people from all over the community to read the same significant book at the same overall period of time and get together and discuss it and have activities and so forth. Around that time was when there was a lot in the news about the shooting and death of a police officer, Officer Faulkner, who was shot by a 17-year-old African-American male. Then as well, there was 9/11, the same day as the first Peoria Reads Committee meeting. With those factors together, there was a great interest in bringing community together, both to read but also to discuss relevant topics relevant to the community of Peoria, to bring diverse groups of people together, all different ages, people who maybe wouldn't communicate and about these things at other times or in other ways. So that was the birth of Peoria Reads. And Peoria, go ahead, Roberta.
And I want to emphasize that Peoria Reads is not just a Peoria Public Library program at all. It's Peoria Public Library in collaboration with Commonplace, or Commonplace in collaboration with Peoria Reads. The library and Commonplace are equal partners in this endeavor.
Right, it's been a wonderful partnership. There's also a Peoria Reads Committee that has a variety of people from around the community and has changed some from year to year depending on the topic for that particular year. We've now had 10 years of Peoria Reads, which means 10 different books. The very first one was A Lesson Before Dying by Ernest J. Gaines. We've had topics, we had books on the Holocaust, sometimes classics such as To Kill a Mockingbird, quite a variety of books over the 10 years, and the momentum seemed to grow throughout the community each year as people became more aware of Peoria Reads. We would get asked all year long, what's the next book? What's the next book? Last year's was The Other Wes Moore, which kind of leads into what we're doing right now quite well. It was written by Wes Moore, who grew up in the inner city, didn't know when he was growing up there was another Wes Moore who grew up in the very same area that he did, had the same kind of background, but they took totally different paths just because of small circumstances in their lives. He became a Harvard law professor. The other man is now in jail for murder and robbery. That will lead us quite well into some things we are now doing.
Although, after Peoria Reads 2011, we were considering taking a break. We had kind of decided to take a break. We typically have Peoria Reads in the spring, in the first quarter of the year. And but this time we thought, with the library building projects and with having done it 10 years in a row, we thought maybe let's take a year off.
Right, most definitely. We made a definite decision. Okay, it's time for 1 year off and then we'll go back to Peoria Reads again. We did it for 10 years. Time to take a break. Hasn't turned out that way. In late 2011, early 2012, the mayor contacted Peoria Reads, said he'd like to talk with us. So, of course, you and I went and spoke with the mayor to see what was on his mind, and he wanted to tell us about a book. A book about crime, and particularly gun crime, a book that explains a great deal of what goes on in inner cities. We just had a taste of what is this book. I think the response of both of us immediately was, yes, we're interested. It sounded like a book very relevant to our community, and we were interested in finding out more. We didn't meet with the committee at that time, but we thought, okay, we'll pursue this and see where it goes.
And so before we met with our Peoria Reads Committee, we met with the mayor and a little bit larger committee to see what they were planning.
Yes, and the mayor and others had formed a working group. It was with Peoria County State's Attorney Jerry Brady, U.S. Attorney Jim Lewis, the Peoria Police Department, Peoria County Sheriff's Department, people representing FBI and other federal enforcement agencies. And they got together a working group centered around some needs in Peoria and the book which we'll be discussing. Out of that, and they were interested in addressing gang-related gun violence. So out of that came a task force and anti-violence strategies that are going to be used in Peoria.
Okay. I don't think we have a drum roll, so I'll just ask you, what is this book?
The book is Don't Shoot, One Man, a Street Fellowship, and the End of Violence in Inner City America. I still have to read that title.
It's a long subtitle.
Don't Shoot for short will work.
And
the author's name is David M. Kennedy. Mr. Kennedy is currently the director of the Center for Crime Prevention and Control and a professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. He has been working along with law enforcement initiatives for 15 to 20 years now. The book chronicles his experiences during that time period in developing strategies all over the country to deter gang violence. He started originally about 15 years ago when he had a research grant to study youth violence. Well, he didn't only study it. He participated quite actively through his many years working with law enforcement people and others all over the United States. It was the start of Ceasefire, which was quite well known, and what's been called the Boston Miracle, which drastically reduced homicide rates by 66%. From there was trial and error in going through various strategies all over the country, and his book chronicles going through these different experiences, coming to what I don't think he terms as a conclusion, but as a reader I would term it as a conclusion about what works and why and how it needs to be done in order to curb gun violence.
And so people might be thinking, we're talking about two different things, this program with law enforcement and then our reading program, so to speak. But the connection is, as we read the book, Don't Shoot, and we're looking at a cover of the book on the screen, when we read the book, we see that something that's made the difference in successful deterrence programs is community involvement and community awareness of the program. So in our case, Peorians, our citizens in our community know what's going on, so they can provide support. And when they read about it in the newspaper, we've already seen articles about this program in the newspaper, people know what's going on, and they know what the mayor and the law enforcement is trying to accomplish. And so that's where Peoria Reads comes in, and
right.
Why the mayor enlisted our help.
Most definitely. The strategy is called focused deterrence. And it doesn't only involve law enforcement. I'd like to read a description. And this is from some people involved with interventions in the state of Michigan. This strategy's purpose is twofold. First, it attempts to send a specific or focused deterrence message to a group of high-risk individuals that gun violence will not be tolerated. Second, it attempts to communicate that, as a community, local area programs are willing to provide services to help these individuals to succeed in creating a better and a more productive life. As part of this message, potential offenders are told that any future gun violence will result in the full force of federal and local law enforcement authorities being focused on the groups involved. In Mr. Kennedy's books, he states that generally in cities, less than 0.5% of the population is committing 75%, and I think I've seen maybe as high as 90 or 95% of the fatal shootings in the community. Mm-hmm. Another significant point that stood out to me as I read it is that given the chance, most of those offenders would like to change their lives if they had an opportunity to change their environment and change their path. Those things are really kind of at the base of this focused deterrence strategy. So it involves law enforcement, definitely arresting those who continue the violence, but the other aspect is giving those a chance who would like to change. And that's where the community
where everybody else
comes in. Mm-hmm. The most important point to me, it seemed as I read the book, is that there has to be that community involvement and support for this strategy to work.
Mm-hmm. And so, you know, for people who are on the other side of that 0.5%, those are the people who need to provide the support and may be called upon if you work at a social service agency such as Commonplace, or volunteer for, you know, all of the social service agencies in Peoria who provide the educational programs or other helpful programs to help people get food, get the education, get clothing.
Right, and along with that, gun violence doesn't only affect certain parts of the community, it affects an entire community, it affects the quality of living for everyone, it affects business climate, it affects everything in the community. And it takes that entire community to come together to help stop it. Mm-hmm. That's part of why it's important to read the book Don't Shoot, to get the understanding of what this whole entire concept and how best every individual and every organization can support it and make it work.
So after you and I met with Mayor, law enforcement, then we had to take this back to the Peoria Reads Committee because Connie and Roberta can't make the decision that Peoria Reads will focus on this book this year. So there was a meeting of the Peoria Reads Committee, and how did that turn out?
Well, the reaction, as soon as we explained what it was about, was pretty much, I think, as yours and mine. There was an immediate interest. There was concern about the need to curb violence and to curb violence in our community. Not only have there been many cases of gun violent deaths, but those included things such as a small child sleeping in his bed in his own home who was killed by a bullet. Mm-hmm. It's a strong concern in the community, and Peoria Reads has always looked for issues that are relevant to our community. Now this is certainly one of those. Because though, this is not our typical work of literature.
Yes.
This doesn't stand up there with To Kill a Mockingbird or Ernest J. Gaines' A Lesson Before Dying. It's a nonfiction book, different than our other choices. We have named it Peoria Reads Special Project don't shoot. We think it's important to be part of this community project and to help form understanding in the community of what this project is about and why. Reading this book is the best way to figure that out. Each community might do a little different version of it. Each community has to meet their individual needs, but understanding particularly the why of how things are done is you can get that through reading the book.
And as you said, it's not the typical book we pick out, although we've done nonfiction before. We would select a book through our selection committee of Peoria Reads, and then in collaboration with schools and other agencies, announce it to the public, whereas this way was kind of opposite. This book fell into our laps with the help from the mayor, and so now we'll be suggesting it to readers, whether they are in book groups. It might not be a book that book clubs pick up necessarily, but individuals, those in education, and people who are interested in our community and what's going on and the process for hopefully making it better and reducing gun violence. Can be, they can learn about it through this book.
A point that I think was, well, I don't know if we vocalized it, I think it was kind of relevant in that discussion too. It came to mind when I was reading through some notes last night, and somebody described David Kennedy's approach to gun violence as one with hopefulness. And while we maybe didn't articulate it in that way, I think that that's one of the things that caught the Peoria Reads Committee as well. There is a hopefulness that things will get better, but it isn't just through arrests and incarceration. There's much more to it than that.
Some of the Peoria Reads members who attended that meeting were people I think of as community volunteers, people who serve on organizations like Delta Kappa Gamma, a service organization, or retired from Bradley and very involved in the community, or a neighborhood association representative, representatives from diverse groups in the community, and everyone agreed that we're vested in Peoria and we want to make this a better place.
Right, exactly.
Now I'm going to switch us up a little bit. Don't panic. Where we've got this book, it's a nonfiction book, and it's definitely an adult audience. But what else? Always in Peoria Reads, we select a few companion books. So have we done that this year, and what are they?
Of course we have. Yes, we have. One of the companion books is called Fist, Stick, Knife, Gun. That would be this book by, I guess the entire title is Fist, Stick, Knife, Gun, A Personal History of Violence in America. And it's written by Jeffrey Canada, who founded the Harlem Children's Zone. He talks about his life growing up in the South Bronx and how as a child he was affected by what you might be able to term the rules of the street, and how it affected his behavior and the things that he did, and how violence and the threat of violence become a part of life when you're in that inner city environment. It's something appropriate for adults through adolescents through adults. There is sometimes some street language, not too much, but if anybody has some concerns about that, they might want to kind of check that out first before they work with a group of young people or whoever they're going to discuss the book with. It's very relevant to understanding what young people go through when they grow up in that environment. Okay. Then I know there are a couple others which you have read. I haven't read them yet. Did you find those similar?
Very similar to what you just said about Fist, Stick, Knife, Gun. There are two titles that we selected for the middle school to high school audience. And these are both library copies, so there may be a glare on the covers. And paperback copies have a different cover art, so they may not look the same if you see them elsewhere. This one is called If I Grow Up by Todd Strasser. And the other one is called Scorpions by Walter Dean Myers. Both of these authors write books to the teen, young adult audience, and I read both of them in the last few days and found them to be very similar. Both have a 12-year-old boy as the main character, and these boys are dealing with different stresses in their young lives. They live with their families, who are headed by a female head of household, a mother in one case, a grandmother in the other. The boys are really trying to do what's right, but they're in school, but they're seeing maybe the futility of getting a good education in their eyes, because a good education in the future on the one hand, but they've got their family who doesn't have enough money for food right now. So they're trying to figure out what they need to do now to help their family. They have teachers who may or may not be helpful. And If I Grow Up, there's a teacher who really wants the main character to go to a school across town, which is for more intelligent young people, where he would get a better education. In the other book, there is a principal who, from the beginning, decides that that main character is worthless, and he tells other students, don't hang around Deshaun because he's just a bad influence, and is not supportive at all or helpful to the main character. In both cases, the young boys are feeling the need to get involved in gangs, both to protect themselves from the gangs or from other bullies at school, or to be protected, by the gang. Although both of these books cover the same ground, I think they're both worth discussing with, having young readers that read them and then discuss them, because they bring up a lot of questions. They're similar storylines. I'm not going to give any endings away, but they both end up very differently, and they're really good for starting discussions with young people. Very readable.
I'm looking forward to reading them. I always enjoy reading our companion books, and our adult learners at Commonplace always read them as well.
Mm-hmm. Because even though they're written both by adult authors, these are adult authors who visited inner city classrooms and talked to the kids and know what's going on, know how they talk. And you mentioned Fist, Stick, Knife, and Gun has some, little bit of strong language maybe. These have virtually none. I'm kind of sensitive to, to strong language, and there's some slang, but not offensive. So these are definitely good for middle school through high school students and adults who are interested.
Right, great.
Where would we get copies of the books?
Copies of the books you can, of course, check out from Peoria Public Library, or you can purchase them in local bookstores or online. And we will have some through Peoria Reads to distribute to the general public, but particularly to neighborhood groups, churches, social services, schools, as long as they last,
yes,
as long as our supply lasts. And those are in order now.
Yes, and on hand, in fact,
good.
Copies of all 4 books that we mentioned: Don't Shoot, which is the lead title, Fist, Stick, Knife, and Gun, and for the young people, Scorpions, and If I Grow Up. So we have multiple copies where you can call the library or Commonplace to obtain copies. Now, what else is happening? We had Night Out Against Crime as another announcement of this project. We've had a press conference, we've had a proclamation at City Council, and what else might we expect? Understanding we're in the planning stages still.
Yes,
so.
But there will be a series of radio shows on WCBU starting Thursday, tomorrow night, the 9th, and 4 consecutive Thursdays in the evening. On each Thursday, they'll discuss 1/4 of the book. There'll be a panel made up by mayor, artists, and local law enforcement, and I believe some call-ins with some people from around the country who've been involved in Don't Shoot strategies as well. At the end of the month, David Kennedy will be coming to Peoria. The Exact plans, I think, aren't totally pinned down and announced yet, but he is expected to be here. There will also be a community discussion with a panel at the end of August, and then things will shift into some other activities which will be announced soon.
Mm-hmm. You can also watch for Peoria Journal-Star articles.
Yes.
And we've had a few articles so far where the Don't Shoot theme and the book and the author David Kennedy have been alluded to, but through the month of August, I see these getting to be more frequent.
Right, there should be more coming. Also in the media in general, the public may have noticed that there have been some police actions. There was the Most Violent Offenders Task Force formed and has been working, and there have been news coverages on, there's been news coverage on some arrests made through that and some things that are already leading up to Don't Shoot actions.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned WMBD, or you may not have mentioned WCBU is doing the radio programs. The next morning, WMBD may do some follow-up. So you'll be hearing about it all over the place. Thank you, Connie, for enlightening on this. It's it's a different type of Peoria Reads. As we mentioned, it's Peoria Reads' special project, Don't Shoot. But we're working with many collaborators in the community to make this happen and to encourage Peorians to read the book and get involved.
As always.
I want to encourage everyone to look at the Peoria Public Library website, pick up a copy of our newsletter passages, and keep involved in Peoria Reads' special project, Don't Shoot. Thank you.